Tea, books and dragons. Sign me up. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to do a tag that is all about books and tea, inspired by this beautiful book, Can't Spell Trees Without Tea by Rebecca Thorne. So I say inspired by, the video is inspired by this book. The tag has been around for about 2 years and was created by the wonderful Olivia Savannah at Olivia's Catastrophe. I was sent this book to review, and I was supposed to be on the blog tour last month, and then because I was really unwell I didn't get to post. So this is that video, we're just a little bit late. So yeah, I was very kindly sent this book for review by Pam Macmillan and Tor, and I just had the absolute best time with it. First of all, this cover is just beautiful. We've also got the most stunning end pages, which are leaves and dragons, which are very much part of the book. And if you take the dust jacket off, look at that spine. Plus, and this is a proper like book nerd thing, I love that they've put the number at the top, right? Because this is going to be, I think, a series, at least a trilogy, and I love that they have numbered them. It's the small things, but it makes me very, very happy. And yeah, this book I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed. I think, does it also have a map at the start? I feel like it's, yeah, it's a book with a map, and we appreciate a map in a book. So in this story we are following two characters. We're following Chianti and the terrible booktuber, why can't I remember the other one? Raina. Raina is the one that works for the Royal Guard. Yes. So Raina works for the Queen, the vindictive Queen. She's really evil. And she decides one day to run away with her girlfriend Chianti, who is the kind of the head mage. I feel like that's the way you say it, mage. And they decide to run away together and open a kind of tea room slash bookshop. And we're just following them on that adventure. There are dragons, there are griffins, it's queer, there's found family, there's lovely descriptions of food, there's cozy bookshop descriptions, there's a bit of peril, there is a quest that they're now on, and I'm really excited to get into book 2 as soon as possible. This was originally indie published, and then Pam Macmillan / Tor picked it up and have traditionally published it. And like I said, this is the traditionally published cover, which I really love. And book 2, which is called A Pirate's Life for Tea, I think, yes, is already out in the world, and I'm really hoping to read it soon. So on the back of this, I was like, okay, what can I do for a video? And then I saw Abby from Abby of Pelennor post this tea tag, which I'll tell you about more properly in a minute with the actual title of it. And I was like, that's such a cool tag. And I looked at it, and like I said, it was created by Olivia Savannah. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, I'll do that to kind of link in with this book because it's all about tea. And then I clicked on the original video, and turns out I was tagged in that original video 2 years ago, and I've just never done it. So here I am doing it now, and I thought it'd be really fun. So yeah, highly recommend this book. I'll also leave my May vlog down in the description where I read this and gave my kind of you know, fresh thoughts on it. But highly recommend it if you want tea, food, found family, love, queer characters, all of those wonderful things. I would highly recommend this book. Okay, let's get into this tag. So as usual, when I'm doing tags, I've got my screen up here with the questions on it. So this is called the Tea Time With Me tag. I will put that, obviously, I'll put the original in the description along with Abby's version as well, which I really enjoyed. And it's got sort of 10 or so prompts, and I've got my books stacked up here. So question number 1 is Mint Refresh, a book that does something refreshing. And I had to have a really good think about this question before I picked out a book, and I've gone for a book that has characters that we don't often, or I don't often see in literature, and I really enjoyed seeing stories from their point of view. So the book that I've picked out is the first one, but it's the whole series, and that is The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. And in this book we are following characters who are in their 60s and above. So we follow 4 characters. It's Joyce, Elizabeth, Joyce, Ibrahim and Ron, and they live in a retirement community, and they get together every week on a Thursday, and they look at old cases, and they try and kind of solve cold cases, and they each bring different kind of expertise to this club. And then one day in their retirement village, somebody dies in front of them, and that is their first kind of live case. And I just love this series in general. I feel like books 1 and 4 are the best in the series so far. But I really like how he writes about getting older, the loneliness of old people, the kind of issues that they deal with, like health issues, but also dating, and what it feels like to be kind of left behind by your family. But there's also, you know, to link in with this, one of my favourite tropes is found family, which is one of the ones I loved in this. And this also has that found family element in it. It's funny, it's sad, and I just really enjoy this. And I really love that he's kind of giving voice to a generation of characters that I don't often read. And I really liked having older protagonists. So yeah, that was my pick for that question. Next question is Revitalise, a book that you need to pay attention to understand it. And again, I had a few candidates for this one on my shelves. This one wasn't quite as hard. And then I saw this book and I was like, yeah, you have to really pay attention with this book. And it's not because it's dense or difficult to read or complicated, but you need to pay attention to the details is what I would say. And that book is Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. This is dark academia about a girl who gets into this really prestigious university called Catherine House, but you are not allowed to leave. So once you arrive on campus for your 3 years of what the Americans call college and we would call university, you don't leave. And there is something happening at Catherine House. And that's all I would say. I think this is on my reread list for later on in the year because it's been a kind of 2 years or so since I've read it. But Louisa Neal quoted saying, deliciously sinister, it's almost impossible not to be seduced. And I thoroughly enjoyed this and flew through it when I first read it. But you definitely have to pay attention to the details to understand what's happening later. So yeah, Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas is my pick for that one. Blackcurrant Beauty, a book rich in writing. As soon as I saw this, I was like, it's going to have to be Joanne Harris. She writes such gorgeous, rich writing. And my favourite book of hers I've read so far is Chocolat, which has obviously famously been turned into a Hollywood film in sort of the 2000s, I want to say. And in this, we are following Vianne and her daughter, whose name I can't remember. You can tell that I don't really do character names. Doesn't say on the back what her daughter is called. But anyway, she arrives in this little French town just before Easter, and she opens just before Lent, and she opens a chocolate shop. And it's again about her kind of getting to know her and her daughter, getting to know the inhabitants of this village. And again, the magic of food. You're going to see quite a lot of food in this, in books in this video. It's about the magic of food and about community and love, and you know, a kind of the magic in that, you know, that lovely warm feeling that you get when you are eating with people, but also possibly just a little bit of literal magic. But yeah, Joanne Harris for me is just a gorgeous, gorgeous writer, and her writing is really rich. So yeah, Chocolat by Joanne Harris. Okay, Winter Warmer, a book that's perfect for winter. Obviously, I am filming this on the 1st of June and we're actually having some decent weather today. It's going to be about 25 degrees outside. So this was a little bit of a tricky one to choose and I was like, oh, winter, okay. Then I remembered 3 Hours by Rosamund Lupton. We've now got a Jack in the room, so I apologise if you can hear him padding about. Because look at this cover. This is also on my reread list for this year and I'm going to be reading it probably sort of November time. And this is about a school shooting in a British school, which is thankfully incredibly rare in this country. And we are following, over the course of 3 hours, we are following staff, students, parents, kind of first responders, police and stuff, when a school kind of gets taken hostage and everything is locked down. And like I said, this takes place in the snow and the winter, South's now around as well. And I think this would be a perfect, to me, it's like a perfect wintry thriller, but it's also got some things, some kind of social commentary as well. And you as the reader are trying to work out who the government is and why they are doing what they're doing. And I think it's just this fantastically kind of claustrophobic, fast-paced, wintry read. And it's obviously set on a winter's day, so it had to be 3 Hours by Rosamund Lupton. Okay, next one, Lemon, Ginger and Manuka Honey, an old favourite that brings you comfort. I mean, as soon as I saw this, I thought of this book. And that is The Borrowers by Mary Norton. This is the book that turned me into a reader. It's a classic, obviously. My copy is very beaten up and my spine is like bowed because I've read it so many times. But it's one of those, look at that. It's one of those books that I can just read this in a couple of hours and it's really soothing. And I love the magic of it. In case you don't know this story, it's about I think it's a boy who goes to, with the boy upstairs, who goes to stay with a relative, and he discovers that the borrowers are living under the floorboards in the kitchen, and borrowers are tiny people, and we're following Arietti and her parents Pod and Homily, and I just this is making me want to reread it again. This is probably one of my most read books. And yeah, it's a children's classic for a reason, and it's just one that really brings me comfort. Whenever I've had really hard times or bad times, this book is one of those that just I find really comforting. Okay, Ginseng Matcha, a book full of things you don't usually like, but you loved it anyway. If you have watched any of my content at all this year, this will not come as a surprise. Pause the video, see if you can guess, put it in the comment what your guess is for which book I'm about to hold up, which is absolutely full of things that this year I'd have said, I'm not interested, but I picked it up and read it and I loved it and I'm now completely obsessed. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. So I also don't usually tab books, but I've tabbed this one and I've read the first 2 in the main trilogy and I've got the 4th one on the go right now and they are all being tabbed absolutely to death. So that's another new thing. Prior to this year, I would have said I was not interested in books that are full high fantasy. And obviously Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, definitely high fantasy books. And then I saw Gavin do his vlog where he stayed in a Hobbit hole for a week or so, and the way he talked about the books made me really intrigued and made me think, actually, my reading taste has changed so much, maybe I should give this a go. So I picked up The Hobbit, which is the first, and absolutely loved it. Again, probably one of the most famous series on the planet, but this is about a hobbit who goes on an accidental adventure, and again, much like Can't Spell Treason Without T, we have dragons, we have found family, we have kind of that kind of fish out of water element, and I just adored this and I was not expecting to. I kind of picked it up and thought I'll give it a try, you know, off the back of Gavin's video, and actually I absolutely loved it and I'm now fully immersed in that world and completely obsessed. Okay, next one, 3 Cinnamon, a heartwarming book. Now, one of the reasons why I requested this from Pan Macmillan and they were kind enough to send it to me is because it was inspired by one of my favourite books of the year before last, and that book is also one of my favourite books of all time. So as soon as I saw this question, the heartwarming book, I knew I was going to pick. And actually the book I'm about to show you is shouted out by the writer, by Rebecca Thorne, in her acknowledgements at the end, and she said that she was directly inspired by this book. And so again, if you've been watching my content, do you want to take a guess? I'll give you about 2 seconds, because for me, like, this is the coziest of all cozy books, and it's the book that kind of started me on that cozy fantasy journey, and that book is Legends and Nattos by Travis Baldree. I again was very lucky to be sent by Pam Macmillan and Book Break and Tor a proof copy of this, and I read it, and within about 50 pages I'd pre-ordered the hardback which has got this beautiful kind of chalkboard style artwork on it. And also, like, Can't Spell Treason Without T, this was also originally indie published, then picked up and published traditionally. And I just, like, I can't even explain to you how cozy Travis Baldree's writing is to me. We are following Viv, who is a barbarian orc. She's not an orc, is she? I can't remember now. Yeah, orc, the orc, barbarian orc. Not a kind of orc like we get in Lord of the Rings. But yeah, she's a barbarian orc, and she decides that she is going to hang up her sword and retire, and she moves to this little town and she opens a coffee shop. But the town has never heard of coffee, and she also has to physically build her coffee shop. Like, she's literally hauling stones and putting a roof on it, all of that stuff. And one of the criticisms that I see of this book is that nothing happens. And you're right, nothing happens. That's the whole story. There is a little bit of mild sort of politics in the town, and all of that kind of stuff. There's also a little bit of a romance subplot, but it's mostly just about Viv and this town and bringing this coffee shop to life. And again, we have all my favourite, like, tropes. Found family, descriptions of food, it's cozy, it's queer. I was like, absolutely devoured this. And so for me, this is one of the ultimate cozy books. So if you're looking for something cozy, if you've read this and you're looking for something else, I would suggest this. If you've read this and you want something else, I would highly recommend this. These two are really good. If you like this, read the other one. Okay, so that's that one. I probably gushed about that book enough. Original Chai, a retelling recommendation. Okay, I'm going to show you 3 books because they are in a series, and again, these are queer, they are really fun, they are sarcastic, and they are a retelling of one of my favourite authors of all time, and that is Terza Price's Jane Austen murder mystery series. So we start with, these are in the wrong order told up because they've been on my shelf, Pride and Premeditation, which is obviously a Pride and Prejudice retelling. Then it was Sense and Second Degree Murder, which is obviously Sense and Sensibility. And then most recently, Manslaughter Park, which was obviously Mansfield Park. And I'll just pick one of these. Let's go with Manslaughter Park because it's my favourite cover. These are retellings of Jane Austen and they are so fun. I feel like if you have read and loved Jane Austen, these are really fun because you will pick out loads of the little Easter eggs that Tirzah Price leaves. But also if you haven't read Jane Austen and you're a little bit intimidated by them, I would read these first because they will give you the rough story. Tirzah Price does do her own thing with some of the storylines and the characters, which I also love. But it would give you kind of a taste of the Jane Austen world. Also, if you just like historical fiction, queer fiction, murder mysteries, some of these are quite gruesome. I would highly recommend them. And I'm also obsessed with these covers. They are all this kind of stitched or embroidered style and they're just absolutely beautiful. I also have read all three of these via audiobook, which are on Everand, or they were last time I checked, and I would highly recommend those because the narrator, whose name I can't remember right now, does an absolutely cracking job. And yeah, if you're looking for a fun retelling, I would absolutely highly recommend this series by Tirzah Price for sure. Okay, two questions left. So Chamomile, Vanilla and Manuka Honey, a book that is so soothing you can sleep easily after reading it. For this I was like, I'm going to look at my children's books middle grade shelf, and I've picked out A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. Look how beautiful these editions are. I always get asked about these editions. These are Puffin classics, obviously hardbacks, just absolutely glorious. And I would say that this is a book that I could sleep after reading, but you'd have to read all the way to the end because if you stop part way, you're probably gonna have your heart broken. And we're following Sarah, who is sent to an English boarding school. She's been living in India with her father for her whole life, and she's sent to an English boarding school to get her education, and while she's there her father dies and she goes from being the richest girl in the school to the poorest, and she ends up having to work as a kind of like scullery maid, I think. And it's about what happens to her, and it's about, again, about magic, found family, about the power of kindness and the importance of kindness. And it's just one of those books that just I always come away from feeling soothed. But like I said, you'd have to read it all in one go because if you stop part way, you're probably going to be shedding a few tears. But yeah, that was my pick for this prompt. Okay, last prompt and then we will tag some people. 3, Fennel, a book that's good for you even if you didn't wholeheartedly love it. And I thought this was a really interesting prompt. And I've picked this book, which is kind of representative of books in this genre or similar books. And that book is Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race by Rennie Edo Lodge. This is a book that I read in 2020 along with a whole batch of other books about racism around that time, sort of 2020, 21, 22. And this is a bit of a funny question because I do love this, well, I do appreciate this book and I would highly recommend it, but it was obviously, given the subject matter, an uncomfortable read, and that is the point. It's supposed to be uncomfortable. It's supposed to make you think. So yeah, this is the one I'm picking for this. This is a book about racism and about white privilege, and very much about kind of, it says at the back, on the back, a wake-up call to a nation in denial. And I would I would completely agree with that. It's very much looking at, racism is something that is happening now in the UK. It's not just something that's happening abroad. And yeah, it's quite a tough read. And like I said, that's the point. So yeah, that was my pick for this question. Okay, let's tag some people. So if you haven't seen a tag from me before, all I do is go to my sub feed, see who's posted a video recently, because that tells me that they're active on YouTube, and then I tag them. So we're going to tag Mel from a book feed named Mel, Chloe from Chloe Reads Books, Bree from Four Paws in a Book, who else has posted a video recently, Aoife from Pretty Purple Polka Dots, Kat from Brews and Reviews, who else? Let's do 2 more, Gavin from Gavin Reads It All, I'm going to tag you as well, and who else? Oh, that's not a YouTuber, that's not a booktuber. And Kaz from Cats and Camera. I feel like I've like tagged quite a few people. Some of you might have already done this, but if you haven't, it's a really fun tag. Massive thank you to Olivia Savannah for doing the tag in the first place. I'm sorry it's taken me 2 years, how embarrassing. And also massive thanks to Pam McMillan and Tor for getting this book into my hands. It's out now. I would highly recommend it. And yeah, I hope you guys really enjoy it if you do pick it up. If you got to this point in the video, obviously we're going to have to go with the tea emoji. Leave me the little cup emoji, or leave me a dragon emoji for this gorgeous cover. Please subscribe if you would like more of this chaos, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks everyone. Bye.